iCloud, Apple TV Plus, Apple Music. These are just some of the parts of Apple's services, which have become a bigger and bigger part of the Apple ecosystem. In this episode of the Macworld Podcast, we discuss the state of these services, what they mean to Apple, but more importantly, what they mean to you. Stay tuned and find out more. Welcome to the Macworld Podcast. I'm Roman Loyola here with Jason Cross.
Good morning.
And Michael Simon.
Hello, sir.
In the lead up to Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference in June, we're going over the state of Apple's major product categories. We've discussed the iPad, smart home, and Apple Watch recently, so check out those shows if you haven't already. This week, we're talking about Apple services, which are a huge part of the Apple experience. And from a revenue standpoint, only the iPhone makes the company more money. So we're going to cover the state of Apple services, what WWDC may have in store, and maybe even suggest a few changes we'd like to see. I thought maybe we should start with some news that happened last week that's sort of tied to services.
Sort of. It's very much tied, yeah.
The major news is that a U.S. court ordered Apple to allow external purchase links in apps. Jason wrote a story about that. Could you kind of go over the details of that, Jason?
That was one angry judge. Let me tell you, they were not having it with Apple. 2023 was when I think the final judgment came down, or 2020. I can't remember because there's so many appeals and all this other stuff. But basically, this is the Epic Fortnite thing where Epic was like, you can't make us not let people buy stuff outside the App Store. You know, they got fed up and they just put a link in they put a button in their app that said, go ahead and buy V-Bucks online.
Yeah, and they raised the iTunes price by 30%. And then below that, they offered their own V-Bucks price to their own store for less. So obviously, people were going to pick the cheaper one.
No, it wasn't quite that. It was the prices were the same, but you got more V-Bucks if you bought it on their web store. Because they were saying, hey, we don't have to pay Apple 30%, so we just give you more V-Bucks or whatever. But that's not the point. The point is that Apple does not let anyone do that unless it's a thing that sells physical goods and services. So like you pay your plumber or you buy stuff on Amazon or Uber or anything like that, they can have payments in the apps. They can get payments outside of the app. Everybody else, there's this complex web of rules. Are you a reader app? Like that started with Kindle, with lawsuits with Kindle like more than a decade ago. But it just expanded to be things like Spotify and Netflix and all these other things. Are you a service where somebody buys a service, but this app is to just read the content or, watch it or listen to it? And then if that's the case, then yes, they can subscribe outside the App Store, but you can't tell them that they can subscribe outside the App Store. And then later they were made to be that they had to allow people to tell them, but it's like, you can tell them, but you can't have a link or a button. And then there's specific verbiage and all this other stuff. So Apple lost this suit. They appealed. They took it to they kept going up through the district court. The Supreme Court decided not to hear it. So the district court's ruling standed, and they said you can't do this. So then Apple's solution, after all these delays and court filings and appendings and all this other kind of stuff this year, was to essentially say, well, anything you sell outside the App Store, we have to track that. You have to get a link from us, and we have to track those purchases. And then you owe us, instead of 30%, 27%. And the judge was just not having it. And first of all, the judge found that they lied and stalled and said things that were like in further discovery, like said, you lied to us in court previously about some of this other stuff. So they referred them to the district attorney for the district court in California to see if they want to pursue criminal charges against Apple. I don't think that'll happen, but that it was referred is a big deal. And second, they said, look, you had your chance to abide by this court's ruling, and your solution does not abide by it. You've delayed and stalled so many times that I'm using my authority to impose a remedy on you. And that remedy is effective immediately, not in 90 days or anything like that. You cannot stop anybody from any app developer of any kind of app. You can't carve out any kind of exception or anything like that. Anybody in the US App Store anywhere can put a button or a link that says, go purchase the thing elsewhere, and you don't get to track it, and you don't get to stop them, and you don't get to say they're not allowed to do that or adjust the verbiage. All you can do is put up a neutral message that says you're leaving the App Store. That's it. And that is seismic for the App Store. That is absolutely huge, not just for like Apple's business, but just as a user, your experience of using the App Store. You are going to start seeing every app that offers in-app purchases have, if not only a way to buy it on the web, then at least also a way to buy it on the web versus Apple's in-app purchases.
Yeah, Apple's already changed its developer terms to reflect this. Like, it's now. Like, you can start at any, whatever the next app update that you use could include a link to buy something outside of the App Store.
It had to change those terms immediately, and it has to actually, in practice, be available right now, because the judge said it doesn't require you to build or do anything. It's a policy change. It only requires you to stop doing something you're doing now, like effective immediately. And we've already talked about how Spotify is ready to go with an app. If by the time you hear this, Spotify's app's probably updated. Netflix, like a lot of the big companies, Kindle updated its app for the first time in like 10 years to let you buy books.
Yeah, and listen, it's a better experience. This, Apple has been fighting this because, they want their fees and they want their cut, and, it costs them money to do all this. But, this is going to, at least temporarily until they appeal, and we'll see where that goes. This is going to make the experience on the iPhone much better for millions of people who use these apps. It's a pain when you're using Kindle, when you're using Netflix, and you aren't a subscriber and you can't subscribe. You got to go somewhere else and come back. And, this is better for the user.
Yeah, there's in a lot of apps, it's much better. In apps like, there's already a couple of like mobile games that are willing to sell you gems or whatever that I play that have already updated their apps and have a link in there, and they still have the Apple in-app purchases, but they have a hey, go buy your gems or whatever on our web store and get extra gems or something. And that's not going to last too long. That's going to be extra gems, that it's going to be only go buy stuff on our web store and whatever, because they're just making more money. They just don't pay 30% to Apple.
Well, here's a question, and I think I know the answer, but do they have to offer both?
No.
Like, they don't. Okay. So they don't have to offer a way to buy through the App Store if they offer a purchase. Like, they can just send people to their website.
If Apple had done that in the first place as their solution, that might have flown. But the judge, after several years of not complying and extending and appealing and coming back around to courts and submitting just what the judge called all these really obvious delay tactics and stuff, and then coming up with a solution that's even worse than the original thing that they lost in court about, the judge is like, no, you can't prohibit in any way these things. You can't put any conditions on it. There's no more small business program where you only pay 15% on your first, none of this. What this is probably going to end up doing, at least in the United States, long term, apps are going to stop allowing payments through the App Store, and Apple's going to be forced to make their basically just be a payment processor, charge what Stripe or Square or any of those guys do, which is like 3 to 4%. It's credit card payment processing plus a little bit, right? So, and if they could have solved this all years and years and years ago, if they just said, look, it's 5% now. That's enough to cover our processing fees plus what it costs us to run the App Store.
But it's big. It's a big chunk of their.
It's a big chunk of their revenue, and that's services is a big chunk of their revenue. But how much of that is the App Store? We don't.
Yeah, we don't know, but I assume
But it's still billions of dollars, and they don't want to give it up.
Yeah, so Apple's next quarterly results, it'll be interesting to see what that services number is.
Yeah, this quarter just ended, or it ended in March 30th. So Apple just reported last week, and services made 26.6 or 26.7 billion, which was a disappointment, kind of, for Wall Street, because they expected a slightly higher. Like, we're talking about, like maybe less than 1% higher, but it was a little under expectations. So that's always a problem, no matter what the number is. But it was, as Robin said in the intro, the second highest revenue maker behind the iPhone and accounted for more than 25% of the revenue for the quarter. So services is huge.
Out of that 26 billion, the App Store, and specifically the US portion of the App Store, is how much? We don't know. Like, subtract out Apple Music, subtract out Apple TV Plus, subtract out people's iCloud subscriptions and all that stuff.
Services has grown in accordance with Apple adding all these services to the phone. As Jason says, it's a portion of it, but how big that portion is, we really don't know. And also, how many people are going to bother going to outside sources when it's just as simple as doing boom, boom with your fingerprint or your face and you buy something?
Well, the apps are going to make it worth their while at first. They're going to say, get more or whatever, or pay less or whatever. And they're probably going to do that until they get a better deal from Apple, at least. And already in the EU, the Digital Markets Act prevents them from doing much of this stuff. So kind of around the world, Apple's getting squeezed on their insistence that, at least on the iPhone and iPad, every app, no matter what, only is distributed through the App Store and all payments through the App Store. It looks like that's finally going to kind of end.
Yeah, it would be surprising if Apple won on appeal. Like as it said, the judge was angry.
Especially given the judge's, description of Apple's behavior over the last couple of years in the court, and the fact finding for what Apple is saying behind closed doors versus what they said in court and stuff like that. Like, it's gutsy of them to bother appealing.
Yeah.
They might step in it worse, but I suppose they have to.
Yeah, so in the end, this is going to be good for the user. It makes for a better user experience. Apple will probably take a hit some way financially. We don't know. We won't know for a while how much. And who knows what Apple may do to try and make up that revenue some way or another.
It's going to be hard when, with the tariffs, the hardware is already also taking a hit in it, like even at the same price. That's money that Apple has to pay. So like they're making less profit on those and stuff. So it's tricky. It's gonna be tricky for them to recover this money.
Yeah, Tim Cook said about $1 billion is what they estimate the tariff hit to be. So it's significant.
$1 billion this coming quarter.
This quarter,
just this coming quarter.
This coming the quarter we're going into now, and he cautioned that there are certain circumstances that make that better than it otherwise would be.
Right.
And he also said, God, you don't know what's going to change in the future. But he said, if nothing changes, you would expect it to be worse after this quarter.
Since we're talking about the App Store, the funny thing about these surges, I was kind of going over them. They haven't really changed a whole lot drastically at all over the years. Prices change and they add a few features, but like the overall presentation and, of the App Store, which, I mean, with this ruling, that might offer a big change with the App Store itself.
Yeah, there's supposed to be some decent changes to the App Store in iOS 19 as part of this whole overhaul, but also we're going to see some AI stuff like AI-generated summaries of reviews, which you already see on places like Amazon. Actually, one of the few places I actually find AI kind of helpful is that there's 1 million reviews, and you'll just see a paragraph that says, people liked this about it, they didn't like that about it.
I actually read those too. I was surprised that I trusted them so much, but I do. They're handy.
Yeah, and it seems like they're all made to say, find all the common positive things, all the common negative things, and just say, here's what people liked, here's what people didn't like. And just as an overall summary.
I assume is also AI is when they say frequently returned item, which I assume is also some kind of an AI bot that's pulling that information. But I agree in some way that the App Store hasn't changed in a while, but it did undergo a bit of an overhaul. I don't know, maybe 5 years ago with the Today screen and App of the Day, and they tweaked search. Like it's pretty good. The little ad thing at the top stinks when you search for something and it's obviously not what you search for, but it pops up there anyway. But other than that, it's pretty good.
Yeah, ads in the App Store really kind of messed up the whole experience a lot compared to.
I agree.
To
I
what it
don't
was.
love them. No one does, and we've all kind of learned to ignore them.
There's
there.
There's the idea of like ads, not ads, but like paid promotion in their promotional tabs is one thing, but ads in search results, like everyone's trying to play this game of like making their app look like the thing you're trying to find, but isn't the thing you're trying to find, and then naming it something that confuses you, and then you end up downloading like the wrong app. It's just kind of a mess. It really ads and search results in like a paid place like the App Store feels weird to me.
Yeah. Do you guys ever just go to the App Store and browse? Because I know one of the things Apple wants to do is make it kind of a place. I don't know if a destination is the right word, but it's an app that you check on a regular basis and just.
Yeah, it's for discovery. Like, I'm going to find the next thing I love there. I think nobody starts going like, I'm bored and I need a new app. Like, they just don't start just going like, I need a new app and I don't know what I want. It seems like people know what they want. And then you go, I wonder if there's an app to do this. And then they go search. Yeah. But I do open it up and end up browsing just because I want to see what Apple's doing. I want to see what these app stories are and stuff like that. And I have discovered things that way. But it's never because like I feel like going to discover an app. Like it's more because it's my job.
But I'm with Jason. Like I'll be like, I wonder if there's a way to do this thing that I'm doing in a nicer interface with an app, and I'll search for something and I'll look. And I've discovered apps that way. I never go to that like app of the day today screen and like read what they're talking about. But I mean, I appreciate that it's there, and I'm sure developers that get featured on that page see an uptick in their downloads.
Yeah. I in a way, I miss the old lists that they had, the old rankings. You can still find them, but they're a few layers deep of just like top apps in each category. And I can see why they don't want that to be the leading thing, because that just sort of perpetuates this cycle. If you're in the top apps, then you stay in the top apps because it's what people see. But I always kind of just like seeing that, like, oh, this is getting popular or whatever it is. Yeah, I don't find it to be a great way to discover new apps myself. I find search to be what I'm doing because I'm going there with a purpose.
And that's kind of how Apple trained us to use it back when we first started.
Yeah.
So that's like we go there. There's an app for that. That was an ad campaign. Like, you know what you want to do, so you go search for it. Not, let's discover something. Whereas, like, I don't know, when Comixology was a thing, now it's part of Kindle. But I would go there regularly and look at the new comic books for the week and see if I wanted to read something. Like, it's a different experience with the App Store.
Yeah. And one wonders if that could be a marketing campaign that they could do. Like where they say, like, discover your next favorite app, discover your next thing you love or whatever, and just show people like using the App Store as a discovery thing.
Maybe Apple's most well-known service is Apple TV Plus. At least it's the one that gets the most attention. We talked in depth about Apple TV Plus back in December. It's picked up some momentum since then because of Severance and a few other shows that have come out. It kind of goes through these waves of, a popular show comes out and then you don't really hear about it, and then another show comes out. So I guess the biggest gripe, I forget who it was. There was, I think it was a Hollywood director or producer or someone who was complaining about how Apple's kind of this black hole because they don't know how to do marketing for Hollywood products. They don't know how to do marketing for movies and TV shows. And that seems to be a big complaint about it.
I mean, maybe I'm in my own little bubble, but pound for pound, I see more Apple TV promotion and chatter than Paramount Plus, than Peacock, than MGM Plus. I don't even know that was a thing until recently. Like their stuff is out there. Severance was huge. Ted Lasso was huge. Like I remember reading that criticism as well. And I think the biggest problem, if there is one, is probably that they're not like a traditional director and actor friendly studio. They probably do things a little bit of a different way because they're coming at it from a tech angle in the sense that Apple TV Plus is marketing for Apple products. Like that's just how that works. Like they're not selling the service on its own, even though they are, but they want you to buy an iPhone and then subscribe to Apple TV Plus. Like that's how that's supposed to work. So the way they market shows is a little bit different. But I got to tell you, Apple TV Plus, the quality of Apple TV Plus, I think is better than any other service out there as far as like the amount of really good shows versus the amount of shows that I don't really care about.
Netflix has a big first mover advantage, and there's a whole bunch of kinds of things that you find on Netflix or something that you don't find on Apple TV Plus, like anime and stuff like that. But pound for pound, it's easily the best value. $10 a month. That includes family sharing up to 6 people.
And that's 4K and family sharing, as Jason just said.
That's the highest. Like, you don't get even 4K with Netflix unless you put the highest tier, which is $24 a month.
$25, I know, yeah.
Right. Like, the way family sharing works on Apple TV Plus, it's not when you go into Apple TV Plus, who's watching? And then you have to like choose a thing. It's basically that person on their Apple ID. It's as though they just have their own Apple TV Plus account. It's just straight up. It's so much better. Like the most worthwhile thing for adults, I think if you're kids, they have some kids content, but I think kids don't want to see a whole bunch of original kids content. I think kids want to see stuff that all the other kids are watching. They want to see Disney stuff. Yeah, they like IP that they know and that all the other kids are into and stuff. So
there hasn't been, I mean, Apple got Snoopy, Apple got Fraggle Rock, but there hasn't been like a hit kids show like Blue's, like what is that, Bluey on Disney Plus or whatever that is, or I don't know, Moana or whatever you want to call it. Like they need that for kids, I agree. But yeah, for an adult service, and I'm going to assume that most of these services are making their money off of adults, or with the exception of maybe Disney, are like their adult programming is just solid.
I guess before Apple TV, Apple Music was sort of their big media streaming service.
Yeah, that was the first like big subscription service that they, other than I guess in-app purchases, that was the first one.
Apple Music's been around so long they spun off a classical. Apple Music Classical. Let's not forget about that.
Yeah, that's part of Apple Music. I mean, that's not my world, but I assume if it is, it looks like it's pretty good. I mean, there's a ton of stuff in there. It's just not my forte. But yeah, Apple. I subscribe to Apple Music. I've never paid for Spotify, so I can't compare it directly. But I mean, Apple Music is really good. Quality is great. The library is vast. I often say, like, when I was in college, if I would have had Apple Music, I would have saved thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars on CDs. I mean, I used to go out and buy, like, I don't know, whatever it was, Pearl Jam or whoever the hell came out with the new record. It was like $16.99 on day one or $12.99, and now for a month, for $10 I can listen to whatever I want. If I don't like it, I just delete it, and it's all there.
Spotify still probably has recommends better music, and they have that like AI DJ thing, which is actually pretty good. I think we're going to see stuff like that coming out of Apple, not necessarily a personified AI DJ, but AI music recommendation stuff. I think we're going to see. But I think the main thing is that there's no free, and there's free ad supported Spotify. So they're just, you're never going to catch free with paid anything.
Yeah, they have promotions, a couple months here and there, 3 months maybe, but
yeah, there's a million ways to get your first month or 2 or 3 free, but it's still a paid thing, and you're just getting a few months free.
Yeah, and it seems unlikely that Apple would ever do that, because same thing with Apple TV Plus, that's not their business. Their business is devices. And that's just another perk on top of that.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that the per stream revenue on Spotify is so much lower, because they're going for volume, right? So they have a lot of free users, and that's ad supported. That brings in less revenue, and that dilutes it for everyone, but it raises the number of streams. So the per stream revenue is much better on Apple Music because everyone's paying, and they can divide it up more evenly.
Speaking of Spotify made a big move into the podcast arena. I always think of podcasts as part of Apple Music, even though it's not really. I mean, it's a separate app.
It's very separate. Like if you have Apple Music in your car, you do not have podcasts. Ask me how I know. Right?
I used to use a different podcast app, and I switched over to Apple's app. I do not like Apple's app at all. I like, other apps. So I just don't like the way the interface is all
Overcast
laid out.
is a big one, yeah.
That's the one I used to use. And
Yeah,
then I
Overcast is
decided
awesome.
I would switch to Apple because of the job I do. So I felt like I should be using Apple's apps more. I want to switch. I might switch back to Overcast. Spotify has these big heavyweights in the podcast market. I'm not going to name them, but so that's why their service has become very dominant service instead of Apple's. Spotify has a couple of exclusives, so a lot of people use Spotify instead for their podcasts.
And you can say it. Joe Rogan is their big guy. I don't know why Rogan's beating around the bush here.
It's not just Joe Rogan. He is the one, but there are several others.
Yeah, they have a few.
Yeah, they have a few.
I mean, like, he's the big draw. But yeah, Apple, remember they came out with that big podcast subscription thing, and like that. I guess they still offer that, but I don't think it ever really took off. It never really got anywhere where you can subscribe to a podcast and pay a certain amount and you get exclusive shows and exclusive things. And I don't know. I use the podcast app every now and again. I agree with Roman. It's okay. It's fine, but
yeah, the podcast world sort of all became about getting exclusives for your platform. I think Spotify has that advantage of it's a free way to listen to music, so they get on all these devices and your podcasts are in that app. You're not in an other app. I think that's one of the reasons Apple Music doesn't do as well. I mean, Apple Podcasts and Apple Music, they're not all. It's not one app that's getting sort of the whole crowd for both things.
Is the Spotify
Rogan is no longer exclusive, by the way. That his new deal, you can get Rogan on Apple Podcasts, but they had their years of it exclusive to Spotify, and that did its job for sure.
When it was exclusive, was it available on the free plan, or did you have to pay to hear the Joe Rogan stuff?
I think it was available on the free. I think I think it was, and of course he's got his sponsors and stuff.
But yeah, I don't see Apple like needing to do that. Like as Jason says, like that's not exclusive anymore, and like it's so easy to get this stuff, particularly podcasts. People share clips all over. I never listen to Joe Rogan, and I know like 30 different shows that he's done just because.
I don't
of
have 3 hours a day. Listen to podcasts.
So like I understand why Spotify did it, and it certainly worked as a marketing tactic. But I don't think Apple would need to do that to elevate its music or podcast platform.
But to the point of our sort of general discussion here, and to not be and to move on to the other services, like we're talking about the state of the services. I think Roman's right in that the podcasts app and platform needs a little love. Like they keep making little improvements here and there, but I think for people who are really into podcasts, if you go look at something like Overcast, I think they're not doing a lot to win over that crowd of people who are like core podcast listeners who have a bunch of features that they want and like.
Podcasts have exploded over the past few years. And, you'll find people who they just listen to podcast after podcast after podcast.
All day long. Yep.
Yeah, all day long. So it's definitely something that I hope Apple improves.
Well, how many people do you think don't realize that podcast is from the iPod and it's like Apple's thing? Like that's how it started. Like I wonder.
Well, I mean, it wasn't Apple's thing. It was Mark Andreessen or whatever. I can't remember
an Apple device thing.
Yeah, they got its name from that, right? It got its name from where it's radio for your iPod was basically the pitch. We're going to combine RSS distribution and MP3s to make radio for your iPod. That's where podcast comes with the pod.
Well, this service, I wonder if Apple needs to even pay any more attention to is the books service. I don't know. I wonder if people listening to this even realize that Apple has a book service.
That's the hardest one to like remember exists in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have been reestablishing my reading habit, and I go into Apple Books, and sometimes I don't find what I'm looking for, so I end up going to my Kindle or the library even.
I mean, it's really hard for Apple to compete against Amazon here because they make dedicated readers. They have libraries. First of all, it's way cheaper. Everything. To buy a Kindle book on Amazon, it's going to be cheaper than iBooks or books. And there's no benefit to reading on an iPad. The Kindle e-ink stuff is really nice. It's pleasing to read. It's nice on your eyes. You can see it in sunlight. Like, there's no benefit unless you really want to carry an iPad and not a second device.
Yeah, the only benefit is if I already have an iPad. Like, I could just... And it's not like there's not a Kindle app. They don't have the distribution that Amazon does where
correct
you can shop on Amazon and there's just a link that says buy this book or buy the Kindle version, and then it's in your Kindle account and it's in your one Amazon account. I don't necessarily know that it needs that, but if Apple wanted to make books really big, then they would start doing things like, okay, well, since we're not on e-ink displays, let's lean into color. Let's lean into comic books. Let's lean into these things. Let's build some exclusive deals. Can you imagine the deal between Apple and Marvel to publish all the Marvel comics on iBooks? Can you imagine iBooks Plus, a subscription service that lets you read as many books as you want all month? I mean, there's a lot they could be doing here. It's really treading water.
And I don't know if they're interested in doing it. Tim Cook mentioned it during the earnings call, and I DM'd Roman. I'm like, did he just mention books?
Yeah.
It's easy to forget that it exists.
Yeah. Jason mentioned how what they should do is take advantage of the presentation properties of the iPad. And one of the things I thought is, hey, how about magazines? Well, you can find magazines in Apple News. How's that for a segue to the next service?
That's great. Yeah.
So I use Apple News all the time. And mostly what happened was I stopped using Twitter/X and had to find another way to get my news feed. And I ended up using news a lot more.
I like the news app a lot. I like how it organizes and presents stuff. I like how it's curated and not I get really frustrated with Google News's algorithm because it takes a lot of things I search for that I'm not looking for news about in my life. I do a lot of searching for guitar stuff because I'm just looking up for how to do this or a new routine or a new riff or a new practice stuff. But so now it thinks I want to read every Guitar World article in the world. And I do not care. And it can't get it out of my feed. So I like that Apple News is tell us your interests. We're curating stuff. What I don't get a lot of value out of is News Plus, the paid version of it. In fact, the thing that I like most about News Plus now is they're starting to add the games.
I use
New York Times and stuff has and everything. And
I was just going to bring that up.
They're pretty great. It's a pretty great crossword app. They're pretty great puzzle games. I kind of like them.
There's a game called Quadrils that I play all the time because you have to create words and stuff. But yeah, I agree. That's a cool benefit. I don't look at the magazine subscriptions either, even though I'll look at Hours occasionally. But if I didn't have it, I can get it elsewhere because I work here. I don't know how many people look at that stuff, but I will say they do kind of filter the magazine stuff into your For You feed when you subscribe. So there is that, but I'm not 100% sure what the free versus the paid app would look like anymore because I've been a subscriber for so long.
Yeah, I'm a subscriber because of Apple One. I wouldn't pay otherwise, but mainly what it gives you is all those magazines and then certain paid publications, paid newspaper publications. You'll have articles that are for News Plus people and stuff. They do keep doing stuff with News Plus. Mainly it's the games, and the newest thing is the food stuff. That's another kind of interesting thing. It's kind of cool. I think it's not the best app to use while cooking, but they do a lot of clever stuff in it. If it says when an ingredient is named in the steps, it's a hot link and you can tap on it and it'll pop up how much the volume it's supposed to be. It's a quarter cup of this or whatever. If something tells you how much time it's supposed to be, that's a hot link. You can tap it and start a timer and it's automatically named and stuff. The timer's automatically named and everything. So they're doing some clever things, but then there's some other things that are table stakes with cooking apps, like adjusting portions, and that isn't in there, So but that's gotten to be a big thing. Like all these newspapers, or especially New York Times, they just won't stop writing about recipes and food and stuff. It's just it's like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing now.
I mean, it's big. I probably search for recipes 20 times a week. Like if there's something in my fridge and I don't know what to do with it, or if I don't know what to eat tonight, and I'm like, oh, chicken's on sale. Let me see. It's
just weird that it's news to me, because it feels like that's the least newsy thing. Like recipes is something that's like old. It's like the opposite of news. It's like so yeah, it just feels strange.
Going back to the puzzles in Apple News, I haven't actually done any of the puzzles. I'm not really a puzzles type guy, like crossword puzzles and things like that. So I haven't checked. Do those puzzles have any references to Apple Arcade? That was also my segue.
Yeah, I knew you had to be when you went back to them. They don't. They don't at all. But Apple Arcade is one of those services that I don't think is very popular, even though they really put their thumb on the scale, like giving it a whole tab in the App Store and everything. Like just, it almost would be better off broken out into its own app. But it has grown into a service that I think it's $7.99 now, for $8 a month, has a lot of good stuff. And it's a nice and refreshing change from typical games in the App Store that are either going to be $5 to $10 each, or they're going to be free, and you are going to hate all the ads and the upsells and the in-app purchases and all that other kind of stuff. And it, to the degree where they design games around them, and it ruins the gameplay. It's not just that I get annoyed by the interruptions. It's that the games are designed to get you to buy these things. So when you take that out of the equation, it really changes how good these games can be. So yeah, it's just kind of low key become really good. They've started to, a while back, they made a policy change where at launch, Apple Arcade was only original games, only new games that are only in Apple Arcade. And then they changed that policy kind of quietly to say, oh, no, we'll put games that are already in the App Store or already exist on other platforms. I think the other thing was like, it couldn't be in any other subscription platform. It could be on Steam or something like that, but it couldn't be on any subscription, Game Pass or anything like that. They got rid of that, and they said, we'll put games in there that are also in the App Store. We'll just put a plus near the end, right? So it'll be Doodle Jump Plus or whatever, right? And that changed everything, because now they added classical Final Fantasy games and all kinds of great stuff. There's just lots of good stuff in there. Dead Cells. There's a million things that have been in the App Store. They're just not always brand new, but they're really good. And you can just $8 a month. So
I mean, here's a thought to bring this back to the beginning of this podcast. With the changes to the external payments and in-app purchases, is Apple going to lean heavily or heavier on Apple Arcade as a revenue source? Because as Jason said, it is good. It strips away all the in-app purchase stuff, which, you don't realize. Again, I'm just echoing what Jason just said. You don't realize how much it changes the gameplay when it's there versus when it's not. So I wonder if now that, A, they have to do it right now, and B, it's unlikely that they're going to win on appeal. So this is it. Like, this is the new formula for the App Store. Will Apple will it lean heavier? Will it market it more? Will it break it out into its own app? Whatever, to push Apple Arcade as a way to play free of in-app purchase.
I don't know how the calculus shakes out for developers, because if you're a developer, you're real excited about the idea that all your in-app purchases no longer have a 30% tax on them. Right. So maybe you don't want to be an Apple Arcade. But then on the other hand, Apple has a good incentive to work with developers to pay for exclusives or whatever they're going to do to get more people subscribed to Apple Arcade as a way to play. As you said, though, Mike, it totally, like, they changed the game rules and balance and everything to be built around whatever virtual currency they have that you have to buy instead of earn. And when you take that out, you get a game like Grindstone that game could have been outside of Apple Arcade with paid gems to buy or whatever, and it would have been like not that interesting. But in Apple Arcade, when they don't have that and the game can be balanced to freely float from session to session to session with like steady improvement and upgrades and getting better, it's so great. It's one of the best games, and you can only get it there. So I think there's a lot they could do. Apple Arcade's good, and I think they need to let people know better. I don't think they understand game marketing. I don't think they understand gamers. I think it's good in spite of itself, but they need to let people know better. And I think you're probably right, Mike, that's good. A place that they can start to make up some of that revenue might be spend money now to get a bunch of game developers on board. You pay them the money to be on Apple Arcade, or to be only on Apple Arcade, or be on Apple Arcade first or whatever, and get there for their mobile apps and games and promote that.
I think there used to be a TV commercial way back when it first launched, but I wonder how many people subscribe to really all these things. Roman, I'm going to steal your transition. I wonder how many people subscribe individually to all of these different services, or just happen to get it because they bought Apple One, which gives you lots of iCloud storage. And if you use two of these services, it pays to just get Apple One because you get all of it at one, and you're getting a bunch, if not free, heavily discounted. I wonder how many people have Arcade and then never opened it because they got it through Apple One and they never looked at it. And if they saw a commercial for it and they're like, well, wait a minute, maybe I can check that out. So
yeah, I mean, it's a whole tab in App Store, but we just talked about how people don't really browse that way. I think they go there looking for something, right?
You go to the App Store with a purpose. You don't go there to look.
To find your purpose.
Right. But Apple One is probably the best value of a digital service that's out there. I mean, it's like if you get the top tier with all the family sharing and everything, it's like $42 a month or something. And if you break that down, you got iCloud, 2 terabytes of iCloud storage plus Apple TV plus Apple Music. Just those three alone, it basically pays for itself.
Yeah, there's Apple One's what's included and stuff is a little different in different countries and stuff. You get, I would say the middle tier, the family tier, that's $26. There's an individual tier that's $20 a month, but the middle one's the family tier. That's 200 gigs of iCloud, and it's TV plus music and arcade. TV plus and music for you and 5 other people for $26 a month is a pretty good deal. And like you, I have the top one, which adds in news and fitness, which is the other one we haven't really started to talk about. That's the one that's, I think, the least interesting right now because it's workout videos. You guys, like, we put your Apple Watch stats on the screen. They finally made it so you can watch these videos without like an Apple Watch. Like, you can just bring them up on your, well, like, that was a stupid requirement to begin with. Just kind of sell it as an Apple Watch add-on. Like, they didn't need to do that. But I think it's the one that over the next year and a half is going to see the most improvement because they're leaning so far into health. They want so much health stuff. I think you're going to start seeing things like food and calorie, tracking stuff and other sort of AI fitness help and things. I think there's going to be a lot of new stuff in Fitness Plus over the next couple of years. And it's not just going to be workout videos.
The thing that they're missing with Fitness Plus is hardware, and people have floated the idea of buying Peloton forever. I don't know if Peloton's for sale. That's what makes Peloton so unique, is that you bought the bike, so you have to buy the service with the bike. Like, that's how that works. But like, people are going to use that because there's a big stationary bike sitting in their room. With Fitness Plus, like, you have to get the motivation to do something on your own. If Apple somehow partnered with someone or bought something or made something that was sitting in your room, whether it's a rowing machine or a tonal type thing, whatever it is, I think that's like the missing piece to fitness. Because I've done a couple of the classes. They're good. They're well produced. Great music. The instructors are likable. It's good stuff, but they're missing that component that brings it all together. And like Jay said, the Apple Watch isn't it. Like, that's not the thing. Like, it needs to be a piece of exercise equipment. Peloton would be perfect, but I don't know that they're for sale.
Yeah, and I don't think Apple wants to start selling exercise bikes, like producing and selling exercise bikes and stuff. I mean, the other side of that is they could pitch it more as a platform. They could work with partners, maybe not Peloton because they have their own platform. Other people selling exercise bikes could be like with Apple Fitness support, and on the bike, you'd have special biking Apple Fitness Plus stuff that you could access on there. Part of what makes Peloton great is it's live, but they have these live coaching things. It's like a live spin class with a screen, and that's not something that Apple does really. All those workout videos are videos, but there's a lot of room for them to do stuff. I think where they're going to go with it is a lot of the health stuff they're working on is going to find their way into Fitness Plus. There's so much there.
There's that rumor of a Health Plus service that's more like wellness, not fitness. I don't know if that ever. I mean, maybe. I know Amazon does something similar already. In my mind, that's such a murky area to start getting into, like diagnosing people's issues and stuff, and it opened it up to a whole lot of
I don't know that they're going to get into sort of diagnosing health issues, but I do think that they're going to get into like recommendations for better health.
Like coaching. Yeah.
Coaching and your diet and stuff like that, like talking about those kinds of things. And that could end up in a new service like Health Plus, or that could be part of Fitness Plus. But right now, I mean, what are they going to do? Like more and different kinds of exercise videos? That's not going to get people interested. That's not what they need to do. So they need something else. They need to go somewhere further.
There is one last service that's iCloud, but is there really anything to say about it other than to repeat our complaint that they need to increase the free storage?
Yep. They'll do anything to not increase the free storage. They'll give you temporary free storage when you're transferring devices and all this other, like literally anything to not make it more than 5 gigs.
Yeah, well, I of course agree with that. Even Google, I think offers 15. They've offered that forever. Like even that would be a huge boost for most people. iCloud Plus is good. I like the private relay stuff. I like the hide my email stuff. Like it's a good service for. It could be as little as $1 a month if you get the lowest tier plan. The lowest tier storage rather. It's good. And again, that's another Apple One situation where if you get that middle plan, it's 200 gigs. The top plan's 2 terabytes for 6 people. I mean, it's all the storage you'll ever need. It's for, backups and photos and move whatever you want to put on there. It's a really good value.
But the free is just ridiculous.
Yeah, the 5 gigs is nuts. I mean, they offered that in 2008 or whatever it was. Whenever iCloud came out. I mean, it's laughably low. I agree.
I think it's before that. I think it's when they changed from the .me over to iCloud. I think it predates the
2011 was iCloud.
Okay.
October 12th, 2011. 5 gigs. So we've had it for 14 years. It's been 5 gigs.
It could be 20 gigs or something. And the whole
it's not like a cost
storage. No, all these storage limits need to change. The one thing that they can't do is make free good enough that you don't pay. And I'm like, if it's 99 cents and they offer these other things like private relay and stuff like that. So find other ways to incentivize the pay. And just let me take more than 100 photos, and
it's nice to feel like they're not nickel and diming you and forcing you to upgrade.
Right. Like if I buy an iPhone, I can't really use this unless I pay at least $50, like another $1 a month or whatever it is. Because you really kind of need that $299 tier if you plan to even take pictures with your iPhone, unless you're gonna plug it in and sync it. Like nobody's doing all this. Like, come on.
Well, with that recent court ruling, maybe we're never going to see that change now because they need to find new revenue streams.
Maybe they'll lower it to 2.5 gigs.
Well, that does it for this episode of the Macworld Podcast, episode 933. Thanks to Jason Cross.
Thank you.
Thanks to Michael Simon.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks to you, the audience. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to the Macworld Podcast in the podcast app, on Spotify, on YouTube at the Macworld Podcast channel, or through any other podcast app. Do you have any comments or questions? Send us an email at podcast@macworld.com or contact us through Blue Sky, Facebook, or Threads. Just search for Macworld and look for the blue mouse logo. Join us in the next episode of the Macworld Podcast as we talk about the latest in the world of Apple. See you next time.